Hi and welcome to Whiskey Shared. You're watching my comparison of rum finished whiskies. I'm Toby and you're watching Whiskey Shared. Welcome to my comparison review of 3 rum finished whiskies. I noticed recently that I've actually got 3 rum finished whiskies in my collection, and from memory they're all quite different. So obviously I wanted to try them side by side to see how different they are and what sort of characteristics they have, and if they are in any way similar, even though they are quite different in terms of their initial makeup. So I've got a Canadian rum finished whiskey which is 10 years old. I've got a Swedish whiskey from Mackmyra, which is the Moment Karibean, and I've got the Balvenie Karibean cask, which is 14 years old. So the Balvenie, being the Scotch whiskey, is potentially the most well known of the 3, although in parts of the world maybe the Canadian Pike Creek is more well known, but definitely in this part of the world I'd say the Balvenie is the most well known. We've got the Pike Creek, which is not a single malt. It is obviously made up of different grains, but I couldn't actually find the mash bill for this. I believe there's some wheat in there, I believe there's some rye in there, and some barley, but I don't actually know the makeup of this one. The Mackmyra is a single malt. That one is finished in rum casks for about 75% of the total whiskey makeup, but some of it is finished in ex Oloroso and cherry wine casks. So they've blended those together, but rum finishing is the main one. And with the Balvenie, that is a standard single malt aged for around 14 years before then being finished in rum casks. So they are all finished whiskies, some more to a degree than others, and they're all different ABVs. But it will be interesting to see how different they are. Shall we find out what they're like? On to the whiskey. Right, so I poured the whiskies in the order they were originally on screen, but to help you at home I'll put the labels underneath so you can follow along more easily. Interestingly, they all have a similar colour. I don't know if any of them are coloured, but it is interesting. I would say at push, potentially the Mackmyra is slightly lighter, but that could be the lighting. It may look ever so slightly different for you at home. So let's start off with the Pike Creek. It's the lowest ABV of all of them. It's 42%, and it's probably the cheapest. It retails for about £28. So yeah, let's try it on the nose. Right, so when I first got this whiskey, it didn't seem too overpowering, but recently, last couple of times I've tried it, and right now it's so strong. The rum on the nose, you would think that somebody'd given you a glass of rum. It doesn't smell like whiskey at all. There's lots of brown sugar. It's incredibly sweet. It's almost like molasses. That sort of really strong, rich, sugary sort of treacle on the nose. It's a little bit fruity, but they're rich, sugary fruits, almost almost like stewed dark fruits, but that's about it. Don't really get much else on the nose. So let's move on to the Mackmyra. It's the highest strength of all of them. It's 44.4%, and obviously it's the only one that isn't 100% finished in rum casks. It's a Swedish single malt whiskey which is stored 50 metres underground in the Bodus mine, and obviously they've chosen the rum to have the most influence. So let's see this on the nose. Right, it's miles away from the first one. The first one smells like rum. This smells quite fruity. I'd say it's orchard fruits like red apples. It's very sweet. I'm getting like you know the flying saucer sweets. That sort of the sweet sugary sherbet that's in that. There is almost like a fizziness on the nose. I have reviewed this once before, just after I got it. Put a link up there if you are interested. But yeah, that one's completely different. So let's move on to the Balvenie. The Balvenie is 14-year-old single malt from Scotland. It's finished in rum casks, 100% as far as I believe, and this one is 43% ABV. So let's try this one on the nose. Right, my immediate reaction is this smells like a single malt whiskey. There is a sweetness on the nose, getting tropical fruits, sort of pineapples, mangoes. Yeah, it's lovely and sweet. Maybe even some red apple or green apple, mate. Yeah, red apple. There's definitely red apple there, mixed in with those tropical fruits. The sweetness smells a little artificial, but it doesn't smell like rum on the nose. Obviously, these whiskies aren't designed to smell necessarily or taste like rum. They're to be influenced by the barrels to give them an interesting or unique flavour. But let's try the Pike Creek on the palate. Yeah, so for a rum finished whiskey, that tastes exactly as it smelt on the nose. It tastes like rum. I think if you gave that to somebody not knowing what it was, and if they're not necessarily a rum drinker, they could be persuaded that that was rum. There's nothing that stands out from it other than that sweet sugariness. I remember it being so different when I first got it, but actually that rum sweetness is too much for my palate now. I've had that bottle about a year, and maybe just over, and it just lacks character. If you love sugary sweetness, then you'll like that, but it's lacking any depth. I'm not really getting anything out of it. It's quite thin on the palate. It's very sweet, but the finish is non-existent. It disappears very quickly, and yeah, simple, sweet, but nothing unique. Right, let's move on to the Mackmyra. Okay, the Mackmyra is miles away from the Pike Creek. I'm getting tannins, I'm getting that sort of tannic dryness from the sherry. I'm getting lots of sugary sweetness, but more like apples. The tannic quality that's coming from the Oloroso and potentially the cherry wine, definitely picking up a hint of cherry in there. Yeah, it really is clinging to the mouth, and at 44.4%, it's not too high ABV that needs water, and it's sweet, but there's still like a malty undertone from the single malt whiskey. Yeah, there's definitely an influence there, but I wouldn't immediately say that I could pick out rum, but it has a really nice character, that whiskey. It's sweet, it's fruity, a little bit tannic and dry, but it tastes like a good quality whiskey. Miles away from the Pike Creek. Right, so let's move on to the Balvenie. So the Balvenie is it's a very grown-up brand. It's very prestigious. It's like the more refined big brother of Glenfiddich. So let's try this on the palate. Okay, totally different again. Obviously the underlying spirit is what gives the Balvenie its character. It's quite malty. There's a little bit of that tropical sweetness, but it reminds me of something like a Glenfiddich 15, but with an extra level of sweetness. It's like yeah, it's like you've taken a fairly decent everyday Scotch whisky and it's been put in something that adds a little bit of sweetness. Obviously that could be exactly what the malt master David Stewart was after, just rounding it up and adding those sweet tones to it. But it's not a bad whisky. I'd just say that potentially for the money, it feels like it's not necessarily giving you much more back. It's not a bad whiskey, but with this one, it always gives me the impression that you expect more. It's just a little bit too light in terms of that added sort of character that the rum's supposedly given to the whiskey. I just expect a bit more. So for me, it's interesting to try these side by side. The Pike Creek is a bit too commercial, a bit too over the top for me. The Balvenie just doesn't give enough, and the Mackmyra, potentially, I got that as part of Somerton Club, so I got it for a bargain price of £50. I think if I had to pay full retail for that at the time, possibly wouldn't have after I tried it, but that's probably the standout dram of the three. It's the one that has the most interesting going on, and it's the one that you feel like you're getting the most value. It feels like they've done more with it, whereas, you know, the other two are either not enough or too much. So yeah, this is the one I'll go back to. And if you want to suggest any other rum finished whiskies that I try, why not put them in the comments below? And if you'd like this video, why not give it a thumbs up? And if you don't already, why not subscribe? Slauncher. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give it a like or a comment? And please consider subscribing for more videos like this.